thing for us is looking at making sure we continue to do the things to make our game safer. So we want to make sure that that hits the first boundary. The 17 games is a long season. So we want to make sure we look at that and make sure that we continue the safety efforts. You've seen a lot of the outcomes of that. Kickoff's a good example of that, the hip drop. So we're going to continue to do that. That's number one. Working with our players' associations is number two. We would reach an agreement with them if we're going to proceed on that level. But we also, third, and this is not necessarily in order, is the quality of our game. We would do it in the context of reducing the number of preseason games. We think that's a good trade. Less preseason games and more regular season games, I think most anybody would think was beneficial. But again, those other two factors are really important.
All right, we're welcoming in our friend Mike Garafolo right now, who is nattily dressed back there in his home studio in New Jersey. Mike, I think that it's regarded by a lot of people as an inevitability at some point. We will go to an 18-game schedule. Roger Goodell pumping the brakes a little bit, saying this isn't an active discussion. It's something we look at in the larger big picture context. But even with a CBA that runs to the end of this decade and beyond, it certainly seems like sooner than later this actually is going to become a discussion point.
I mean, once we got to 17, the question was how quickly till we get to 18, because it's an odd number. It's one step closer. It's like, okay, there's only one more game added now instead of two more games added. That's a way of progressing to potentially get there. But look, it's going to come down to the NFL players on their side agreeing to this as well. And what happened last time was the same thing that was enticing to the owners. One more week of football means one more week of revenue, and that revenue gets split amongst the players and the team. So the players are going to sit there and say, well, we can have more money in the salary cap, which means more money that goes into our pockets eventually. Yes, it's divided up, and maybe it's a small splash for the players in the bottom end of the scale, but it is more money in the pot in that regard. So that's going to be the enticing part for the players here as they have these discussions with the league and decide whether they want to get to 18 games.
Well, it's something to keep in mind. After Roger Goodell said what he said, I asked him about the timing of it. It's important to realize they do not have to wait for the next CBA to start this conversation with the union. They can go to the union tomorrow and say, let's start talking about 18 games and make a side deal. Certainly the expectation and the way Roger Goodell is talking about it, that sure wasn't a no today, and that sure wasn't oh, this is not going to happen for 10 more years. That was a clear, we're thinking through the things that would have to happen to do 18 games. He said, well, fans want more football and they don't want more preseason. So he's saying, well, it would be 18 and 2 preseason. I think it's going to take a little bit more of a concession to get the owners to go, to get the players to go on board with an 18-game regular season. But certainly the wheels are already starting to turn toward opening those conversations. This is not going to be something that's going to take 10 years.
Well, it's also a situation, too, where you have new leadership in the NFL Players Association. Lloyd Howell, the executive director, is a career businessman. He's used to cutting deals. He's coming at this with a fresh eye because he wasn't part of negotiating the CBA, which does not allow the NFL to unilaterally go to 18 games. But if it's going to be an inevitability, why not start doing it a little bit sooner, get the gravy train rolling?